she would go down and teach in the junior church.
Is that right?
Every Sunday, when we could get her. She was good.
How about that?
Well, community kind of helps support them as a missionary project, don't they?
It's a missionary project.
Boy, sure is a good one, from what I can understand.
Just recently, Ruth had to have surgery done on her shoulder. So she had something about, I don't know, didn't understand, Ruth Willis.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah, she had this surgery done on this shoulder, and so she had to wear it up on a thing that covered clear out in front of her. I mean, she looked like she had swallowed a watermelon or had one under her dress or something. Here's her arm up like this, and it had to remain that way.
Mm.
For what, 8 months? 8 weeks, 8 weeks, 8 weeks, 8 weeks, 8 weeks. Yeah, 8 weeks. And, certainly not 8 months. But it had to be, and it dare not move. Boy, that hurt to put mine up like that. But they dare not move it or anything. And yet she went to, where did they go, to Florida? Did she go to, where did?
To his brothers.
They went someplace.
Yeah, Florida.
Well, that's where his Ruth Willis, that's
What's
where the Hemingways went.
Yeah.
They're not her relatives.
You've probably seen someone with a metal brace like
Yeah, I
this.
have.
Well, that's what she's got, a big styrofoam ball instead of that metal thing.
At least there's no weight to it.
No, but she wore a 40-some moo dress to get down over that thing. We had more fun laughing at her.
They came through West Liberty and showed up in church a couple Sundays ago on Sunday. Showed up in church with that thing. I bet the people wondered too, in the wide world is this. But they come to West Liberty to visit they're friends of ours that bought beef from. That they bought beef from. I mean, that Ruth and John bought beef from. So they continue to come, and they were out visiting them. And so they were with them. But anyway, she came in with that monstrosity. Oh, it's so weird.
I was sitting there in the pew, kind of back to the aisle, talking to Vicky or Andrew or somebody in here beside me, and all at once somebody grabbed me right down here on this muscle, and I jumped and I squirmed around. Well, here's John standing there, had a hold of me. I never dreamed he was in 100 miles of the place.
Oh, dear.
That's quite a story. That's quite a story. Roscoe Patrick and I went out there many years ago, started a little Bible study in people's homes. And it's a long story.
And that's the total result of it, isn't it?
John came to it? John, is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's Hemingway's.
Well, I mean, this total community Baptist church is the result of this little spark that the Lord used Roscoe and I to start out there just in homes.
Yeah.
Then they had problems, of course. We had lots of problems trying to get the people to get something. I had the shop in Elkhart then. And I'd hurry up and get my work all done so I could get away about 3 o'clock. And I think 2 or 3 times a week, I'd quit. I'd leave the plant or leave the shop and drive out there on Johnson Street. Johnson Street.
That's the street we go across to go over to turn down to
on the way to
the
the
Dale
church.
Howleys.
Yeah, okay.
I can show you, there's a big tree. I showed Mom this big tree. I pulled over under this big tree and sit there. I'd say, now, Lord, you know why I'm out here. I'm out here because there's people out here and they're troubled. They're trying to get a church formed, and there's problems, and there's hard feelings.
Hi.
And
Wave.
I said, you have to guide me to know where to go today. Where should I go? And I'd just start the car up and go. And you can't be absolutely dogmatic if you hit it on the head, but at least I went and wept with them, prayed with them, shed tears with them. And out of that then came the Baptist church that they built over on New Road, I believe it was. New Road. I never preached over in that church much, never did. I don't know why. I've been out there and had Bible studies with them and so forth. But then, the next thing I knew, I hadn't been up there for a long time. They said, "Oh, you ought to see what's going on out at the Community Baptist Church." Well, I drove out there and I said, I can't believe this. You mean this? Yeah. I said, how many people go to church? About 750. And so they put out a little brochure. In that brochure, they say in there that I was the initiator of that through a Bible study I started out there. But the thing that hurt me, and of course I couldn't blame anybody, Roscoe, they didn't know anything. The people that edited that, whoever it was, I don't know who put it together, they didn't even know Roscoe, because he'd already died, gone.
Oh.
But I felt bad about it because he and I we worked together on
Well, it was simply because you're the one that they were all familiar with, and so they naturally,
Yeah.
if they just chose to put your name
But
in
it
there.
tells you something. It tells you something that you never know when you're planting a little seed
That's
out
right.
there someplace, and you kind of we almost gave up several times. Because, oh dear, we run into one woman. She was impossible, and but we went ahead anyway. I did something kind of silly. I said, I was trying to get a point across to her. So I had it, my old Bible's pretty well worn anyway. So I said, it's a lot like this. I laid the Bible down on the floor and then I stood on it. I said, you see, I'm standing on the Word of God. Oh, I knew that I shouldn't have done that because
Oh, say, I suppose she took a great offense.
oh yes, standing on the Bible.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
That's like
As if-
standing on a rabbit's foot or something,
Yeah,
I suppose.
Well, either that or the fact that it was a Bible was irreverent to stand on.
Irreverence, maybe.
I imagine in her thinking that was.
Oh.
We worried so, trying to get her to understand that there just wasn't anything. The God that created the universe and created us is the only one that knows how to run us and how to operate us. And it's all in this book, and that's where we stand. I stood right on it.
That's like the time down at Bible school, somebody came through and told us, and gave us an experience of about a person that had well, they just wouldn't believe. They had given them the gospel time after time, and so finally, how was it? I guess the fellow finally said to him, well, if you choose to go to hell, then I guess that's just what you'll have to do. If that's your choice, then just go to hell. And that's the way they left him. Well, I got on the bus one day, on the trolley, and was on my way to town. Well, of course, and in those days, not that I don't witness now, but I was just, just gung-ho every person I came to. Of course, I was witnessing to him. And so I sat down by this fellow and began to witness to him. And I asked him if he knew the Lord, and no, and went on talking to him, and I said, wouldn't you like to go to heaven? And he said, no, he wouldn't. And I said, well, then I guess you'll just have to go to hell. And that's all I said to them. I suppose it's time to get off the bus or trolley or whatever. Yeah, I don't remember that part, but I remember saying that.
Where was that?
Down in Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember saying that to that man, and I've often thought since, what do you suppose that fellow could be the Lord used
He
that?
may have cracked a rock.
It could have been something that, that later on he thought, hey, okay, I guess if I don't want to go to heaven, I will have to go to hell.
Yeah.
And that might have done.
The Lord said there's only two places.
Yeah, and he could have used that later on in his life, perhaps. But I thought, what a crude way to just because that evangelist had said that, I thought I could say it too. I guess.
I did worse than that one night when I called on somebody. I'm not even going to tell you about that one. I'm ashamed of it to this day.
Oh, I suppose in ignorance we do a lot of things.
Well, he was so mean to his wife. She came to Bertrand's church, and another fellow and I went up and called on him. And you could see it. He just had that poor woman. She's kept in the background all the time, and he was spouting off, sounding off.
And we say things and we think later, afterwards, you know, oh my.
What is
What did I
today?
do?
The 19th.
The 19th? Okay.
I want to know how you learned all of this, Anthony.
I'm zooming you in now.
You're what?
I'm zooming you in.
Oh,
so
you're zooming me in.
make sure your teeth are clean.
I have some cavities. Do you want to see those?
Yeah. Say, ah.
Oh, my.
You have one eyeball or two eyeballs on that? Just one.
One.
Yeah.
When Anthony was about, 4, I suppose, he said to me, Grandpa, do you like to go to McDonald's? And I said, McDonald's? Well, no. I said, I go there once in a while. Yeah. I kind of got a kick out of that, and I put it down in the back of my notebook, all the funny little things that all the grandchildren say. So later on, he's about 7. So I come back there one day to the house, and I said, how have you been to McDonald's lately? Grandpa, it's not McDonald's. I said, what is it? It's McDonald's. Oh, I said, I'm sorry.
The kids, Debbie's kids call it Mickey Donald. Mickey Donald. I don't know. I think it's because they think of Mickey Mouse. So that must be a kid's way of expressions. Wonder they don't use that in their advertising somehow.
Maybe they do.
They may. That's true.
Boy, McDonald's is one of the most outstanding pieces of business there is in the world.
Isn't that the truth? Oh my, yes, I guess so.
Now they're building a huge one in Russia.
Yeah. No, when you said the huge ones, they're built in China.
Yeah.
They've got thousands of people going to it. They've got to increase it.
Maybe it was China instead of.
One or the other. I know they built a big one.
I heard about. Well, Dan Rather was telling about it.
Oh.
How about that? Isn't that? Is Ann still on that?
No, Grandma's on there now.
Oh.
Oh, that's fine. You can hardly ever get
She's
on.
been on there for. I thought it was Susie there for.
No, they talked to Ann, I think, for.
Oh. Maybe they
Hours.
still are.
Oh, I do.
Maybe she still is.
So for some reason or other, they kind of love you.
Well, that's what I was telling you. I said, well, Lord, I'm ready to go any minute. If you want to take me, if I got cancer, I always connect that with terminal illness anyway. So if you're ready for me, I'm sure ready to go because I remember what Paul said. He said, I'm in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to go and to be with the Lord Jesus. But for your sakes, so I said, it's up to you. Well, then the first thing I know, the phone lines are busy and they're crisscrossing and they're writing cards and they're calling all over the place. The kids are. Cindy's calling once and twice every day. And so I said to myself, well, I am praying for all these kids, and if they're that, that's maybe the Lord, maybe you're telling me something. That that my job is not finished yet. And if it's not finished, then I don't want to go. I don't want to go till you're through with me.
Uh-oh.
He won't take you till he's through.
Fading out.
Huh?
He won't take you till he's
Uh-oh.
through.
Remember?
Huh?
Oh.
That's what happens to old men. They just fade away.
Mm-hmm. Do you have stage fright when I do this?
No, I got over stage fright after I come to know the Lord. I used to afraid to even talk to somebody I didn't know. But after after I came to know him, he took that all away from me. I could stand up in front of 500 people.
You do?
And I can't take any credit for it. That's all come from what he wanted me to do later.
Yeah.
I never spoke to very many 500 people.
Hi, Grandma.
Hi, Denise. How are you?
Fine. Okay. I want you to tell us about when you met Grandpa.
Oh, I have to think about that. It's been so many years ago, and I think I've always known him. I think we've been going around together all of our lives. But first time I saw him was in March of 1929. I was 17 years old, junior in high school, approaching the end of my junior year. And I had been invited to go to spend the weekend with a girlfriend. Another friend and I had been invited. And we had dates with two guys from Purdue University. This girl dated a fellow from Purdue who was a neighbor of mine. And so we went to school together. And so he was bringing a couple fellows home with him. And so we were in Muncie, in Indiana. And we were at her house. And about the middle of the day, it might have been at late breakfast, we got a telegram from him, Purdue, that they couldn't come. Something had happened. I think they had found some other girls they wanted to go out with, really. That's the reason they couldn't come. So they weren't going to be there. So we were pretty badly upset, because that left us all of Saturday night with nothing to do. So we decided, and this girl's parents had gone down to the YW to a square dance, so we decided we'd walk downtown and look in on, see what they were doing. So we went down there, but they were all old people, so we didn't want to stay around there. In those days, you could get out and walk on the city streets with some measure of safety, which you couldn't do now.
Yeah.
So then we decided to walk on downtown in Muncie. And we were walking along, and here a car pulled up beside us. Well, you know, of course we kept our eyes right straight ahead. We didn't want to look around, you know, and act like we were flirting at all, but we knew what was going on. But they stopped. Then we recognized that it was the boyfriend of one of the girls, not the one that we were staying with, but the other girl, her boyfriend, and he had somebody with him. So we went over to talk to him, and they were driving, I think it was a Ford Coupe, Model A Ford Coupe. So he had this really, really good-looking guy with him, and they both went to Tri-State College in Angola, Indiana. So we decided we'd go back to my friend's house, so we all got in the car. Well, I wound up naturally sitting on what's now your grandpa's lap. But,
Yeah.
and the first thing I noticed about him was his big blue eyes. So we went back out to her house, and we danced a while, and then the other boy had to go back out in the country close to where we lived, where his home was. So we ditched the girl that we were supposed to stay overnight with, and we went back home. So that was the first time that was not a real date, but that was the first time that I met Grandpa. Then it was only a week or so later that here one evening it's probably on a Friday night, I was getting ready to go to the senior play. I had gotten a part in the senior play because the girl that had it gotten sick, and so I had just a week to get ready for the part, and it was the part of a colored Negro maid, a black maid. And I had my hair all frizzed up and black stuff on my face. And here, these two boys that we had met before came pulling in our driveway. I live 17 miles out in the country from Muncie, so they came pulling in, and so then I can't remember if that was the night that we actually gave the play or if I was just going to rehearsal. But so I spent that weekend with him, and then we went back to Tri-State. So then they started coming down, not every weekend, but several times until school was out in another month or so. Then he decided that he'd like to work in Muncie, so he came down to work there in the summer. Went to work at Muncie Products, and that was it.
Focusing. Okay. Well, Grandpa was telling me about 2:30. Grandpa was telling me about, I was talking to him about black cats, Some people say they're bad luck.
Well, that's right. He told you about a black cat running across the hood of the car. When they came into Muncie, they came to this girl's house that I was supposed to be staying overnight with, and they parked out in front. Thought we might come strolling along any time. They knew we weren't there right then, but they thought they'd wait a while. So here a big black cat got up and walked right across the hood of the car, came up on one side and across and down on the other side. So they decided they'd better get out of there before something happened to them. So I don't know now whether he decided, black cats are supposed to bring bad luck. Well, you'll have to ask him what he thinks about that.
He didn't think it was bad luck. Because he said that's how you met.
Yeah, that's how we met.
I wouldn't be here.
No, you wouldn't be here. Or your name might be Smith or Jones or something like that, but Lewis is a much nicer name. So he worked in Muncie all summer. Then, instead of going back to Tri-State, he went to Flint, Michigan to school because Muncie Products, where he worked, was a General Motors plant. And they had the co-op school in Flint where you went to school 2 months and worked 2 months. So they persuaded him to go up there. So then he went to school in Flint for a year, but he was home every other 2 months. So, of course, we continued to date. And I was 29, 30. Well, actually it was 2 years. March of 29 to March of 30. 1 year, 2 years. We went together 2.5 years, because then we were married in August of 1931. And then we went back to Flint to live after we were married. And he was still going to school. He went to school 1 year after we were married. And so we went back and forth. Now, the first 2 months, I didn't go with him. I stayed with my folks, and he went back to school. That was the worst 2 months of my life. Then when he came home for 2 months, in the next 2 months, I went back with him. And we did that then for all of that school year. Well, then, that was during the Depression. And,
Oh, because you did live through.
yeah, that was, well, it was, it was kind of beginning to be over as far as the worst part of it, but it was still pretty bad. And at the end of the 1932 school year, he wasn't able to go back to school because they moved the plant to Flint, and they weren't able to take all the students, so he couldn't go back to school. So we went to, there just wasn't any work. So many men were out of work, and there just wasn't any work at all. So we went to Columbus, Indiana, and he worked for Grandpa Coles in what they call the handle factory. I guess that's what it was. And, but we didn't stay at that very long. You know, we were only down there just a few months. And we went back to Muncie. Then we lived out on my grandmother had 20 acres, which is out in the old farm, and that's where we lived when we met. So there wasn't anybody living there. So we went out there and lived, and Grandpa worked in the harvest field. He went out and shocked wheat and worked in the wheat harvest until one day we got a call that we could come back to Flint. There was a job there. So we got the telegram about, I think it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I can't be sure. And by 9 o'clock that night, we were on our way to Flint. We were so anxious to get back up there.
Yeah.
And it just progressed from there on. And here we are. 31, 32, 32, 39, 57 years later. My eyes are going.
Yeah.